From flying submarines to flamethrower car defense systems, actual jetpacks back in the day, and subliminal messaging systems. Let's take a look at some of the craziest patents with prototypes. Shari Furay and Michelle Wong patented a security system for a vehicle, but not just any regular security system. A flamethrower system to really deter anyone going after your car. In the patent, the claim explains a vehicle-mounted defense system that ejects fuel along the door sills and ignites it to create a short, intensive wall of flame aimed at attackers. It is both a single burst and continuous mode for varying deterrence. This was real hardware that was commercialized and sold around 1998, but as late as 2001, sold as the Blaster. It had a dashboard switch which fired 2-meter fire sheets down both sides of your car. This hit the news immediately. So, you may be thinking, is this even legal? And it turns out, it isn't in the US. But this patent and product was made in South Africa, where at the time, lethal force was allowed to be used in self-defense. This device wasn't banned whatsoever, fully legal, and for about $650, you can get your very own flamethrower defense system for your car. Furay insisted this was non-lethal, but would definitely blind an attacker. Looking at videos of live demonstrations, I wonder how this wasn't lethal. Despite its controversialness, this hardware and patent actually won a Nobel Peace Prize. The inventors won the 1999 Nobel Peace Prize of Improbable Research for a car alarm consisting of a detection circuit and a flamethrower. Unfortunately, this was discontinued in late 2001, having only sold a few hundred of the systems. But in an unpredictable pivot, Furay went to handheld flamethrowers instead. So, this was our first example of a crazy patent. One that wasn't only submitted as an interesting idea, but worked upon with actual prototypes. Let's get to the other three. Wendell Moore was an engineer at Bell Aerosystems. Around the mid-1950s, he produced and prototyped the Rocketbelt, perhaps the first actualized jetpack. The Bell Rocketbelt was a personal propulsion device made at Bell Labs, but headed by Wendell himself. This belt had a max flight time of 20 to 21 seconds, where a person had to be tethered to the ground. But around 1961, Harold Graham on the team completed tether tests and made their first untethered flight near Niagara Falls that year. He went 4 feet high and went 108 feet towards the falls in 13 seconds in this live demonstration. Eventually, they got their prototype to fly as high as 10 meters, but was still limited to 21 seconds of airtime. Despite making some air, it was noted that at such heights, it wasn't practical or viable to use parachutes, so any mistakes would result in a full fall, making this a little impractical. Of course, with a working prototype, they went right to the military in demonstrations at Fort Eustis, Virginia. Then, at Fort Bragg, they even had a demo in front of the president at the time, Kennedy. And after, they made random appearances at events such as the 1984 Summer Olympics opening ceremony in Los Angeles. At the time, there was a lot of hype around this brand new jetpack contraption. Well now, despite this being a working prototype, the weight, fuel, and flight time were real hindrances, resulting in this product being just a showpiece, if anything. Unfortunately, the military did not pick this up, and if you look at modern renditions of the belt, it's more so just one or two people flying around for a bit as a stunt. But we don't end there. There is, of course, a twist to this story. In the 1990s, a group tried to build an updated version of the rocket belt, naming it the RB2000 rocket belt. Entrepreneurs such as Brad Barker, Joe Wright, and Larry Stanley got involved, and together they claimed to have made a rocket belt that can fly for over 30 seconds. And not only that, it was lighter and generally better. So what happened to it? What makes this part of the story super interesting was that after successful runs of their new belt, the product got overtaken in drama. Disputes began over who actually owned the RB2000. Between the three, who received the most credit? They argued how profits would be split and who would be in charge. So of course, things spiraled out of control when Larry Stanley kidnapped Joe Wright at gunpoint and forced him to hand over the rights to the belt. Wright was captive for over 10 days, trying his best to survive, being beaten and threatened until he escaped to contact police. Stanley was convicted, and of course later in 1998, Joe Wright was then flat out murdered, being shot in the head and thrown aside. But the killing surprisingly remained unsolved. This story has an entire saga to it that we may cover in its own video in the future, as it's super interesting, and leaving it there does not do it justice. This product must have been really good for the three to go after each other. So now, let's dive into our third patent. Donald Reid, in 1958, filed a patent for a flying submarine. You heard that right. He dubbed it the RFS-1, and it was a craft that submerged like a submarine, it could act as a boat when needed, and of course, it can fly. The craft included components like wings, air and water propulsion systems, and anything needed to have a submersible craft that can also take off. First prototyped in his backyard, he took to testing in Asbury Park, New Jersey, but when he made significant progress, he later used larger bodies of water to even going to the Atlantic Ocean. So starting from a small farm backyard pond and making his way to the Atlantic. This thing was tested. Not only was this flying submarine actually prototyped, he later even sued the US government, claiming that Tomahawk cruise missiles infringed on his patent. The case actually lasted years, even making it to the Supreme Court. But ultimately, the court ruled against him, deciding the Tomahawk was not the same invention. He lost the battle, due to having incomplete prototypes with other evidence pointing to Jurassic design differences. What's super interesting was that his case was not immediately dismissed. At first, there seemed to really be evidence or pointers leading to the idea that the Tomahawk missile did in fact take ideas, and maybe more, from his craft. But as it settled, this was disproven, but still interesting. Not to mention, a vehicle that can submerge, sail, and fly being worked on in the 1950s. This was a pretty cool patent and prototype. Alright, let's finish things off with perhaps the creepiest, if not most conspiratorial patent here. We are, of course, talking about the Oliver Lowry's Silent Subliminal Presentation System. He outlined a system, a way for inadvertent hearing or understanding of messages. His patent described this as a way to hide or modulate speech or other messages on inaudible carriers, being described as very low, very high, or even ultrasonic audio, to then play them through speakers or earphones, so the conscious ears hear little or nothing, but the brain fully gets the message. The patent details AM and FM schemes, envelope shaping, and using piezo transducers, essentially outlining a system of techniques to achieve subliminal messaging, messages perceived in the mind, but not heard outright. What's really crazy about this is not that it was an accepted patent, but other works that cited this in particular, as well as existing products and warnings that cover the very same thing. This exact patent was cited by many others, including the ultra-directional speaker, a different patented system that utilized some of the same ideas, but for directed noise. This work, with other related items, were even used in A&E's 2007 New York City billboard for Paranormal State, a billboard that whispered to people passing using directed audio to have one person hear something and another right next to them not hear a thing, already being used in advertisement. The same tech was used in Audio Spotlight's directional speakers to create ultrasound beams of audio to create what they called an audio flashlight, essentially a directed audio tool. And you could buy these speakers. So outside of similar patents using this one as a base, let's go into some context. Around the 1950s to late 70s, there was a subliminal scare in the US. 1957, market researcher James Vickery claimed he flashed subliminal messages in a New Jersey cinema, telling people to eat popcorn and drink cola, leading to many being worried about where else these tools may have been used and whether or not they were forced into something they didn't want to do. Later, he admitted it was a hoax, but the idea became widespread. So, to stop some of the rumors going around about businesses and companies using subliminal messaging, the Federal Communications Commission, or known as the FCC, actually made a public report on this very topic, outlining rules that should have been used in messaging, but in particular, saying, and quote, "Use of subliminal perception techniques in broadcasting is contrary to the public interest," inadvertently supporting the idea that such tech and notions were already being used or underway. Many attribute Oliver's patent as some idea originating around this point, from the 1950s, as an offshoot of the subliminal scare, with no real prototypes and just an idea not actually, well, actualized. But others say cited works such as the directed sound patent to other more secret efforts widely use ideas from this very paper and apply it even today to get overt ideas across. Perhaps to get us to buy just one more thing. Direct prototypes of Oliver's system cannot be directly found, but work that stemmed off its ideas have been circulated and proofed, as well as companies already utilizing similar techniques exist today. It is kind of crazy that an official organization such as the FCC at the time had to warn against such items. Were they only trying to calm the rumors? Or is this tech widely being used? Or was it? What do you guys think? We covered some funny and perhaps some chilling patents with actual prototypes, actualized ideas that bear some merit. Which was your favorite? And what should we cover next? Perhaps let's take a cryptid clue.